should he be arrested for what? Dreaming? Is it a crime? Okay, sure, a bank heist is a crime. But like really think about it. The real crime he committed was dreaming of a better future for himself and also maybe getting some sweet Kelly. Okay? Mom and child, dude, there's a lot of there are a lot of people in here being like, you have to watch this crime video. I should have never said that I was gonna do crime videos because everyone's going crazy. No, we're not gonna watch. I'm not gonna watch that. I'm gonna watch this. I'm only here because we used to watch JCS.
Safe for sponsoring this video. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Inside the bank vault, security guard David Gant had to make the biggest decision of his life. Commit the largest bank heist in history, going on the run as an internationally wanted fugitive, evading the FBI, Interpol, Mafia, and even Mexican hitmen trying to kill him, all to get in an old co-worker's pants, or just go back home to his wife, who was making hamburger helper for dinner. It was so tempting to David. Living paycheck to paycheck, he could use that money to solve every little problem he had, he thought. And even better if he took the cash, he'd get to leave his wife and never see her ever again. And although David hadn't even stolen as much as a pen from his work, on October 4th, 1997, David grew a pair of steel huevos and took the money and ran, stealing $17 million in a heist where every little thing went wrong. The Loomis Fargo heist is one of the most insane stories I have ever read about. So enjoy. Living in a trailer park with a dead-end job, at 27 years old, David Gant's life was unremarkable. With no friends, a wife he had settled on, every day was just more boring than...
Damn, why is Vince shitting on the wife? Uncalled for.
the last. While he was surrounded by millions as an armed guard for Loomis Fargo, he only made $8 an hour. And with no benefits or pensions, everyone there joked about robbing the place just to get their retirement pay. And then one day someone actually did. Philip Johnson, a Loomis employee out of Florida, stole $20 million while closing a shift. He shackled and kidnapped his co-workers, cleaned out the bank vault, and went on the run to Mexico. And it got David thinking, how the hell would he pull off a heist? Now, David had never been a criminal, but he loved true crime. If he really wanted to, he could outwit the FBI, he thought. But fantasies of life on the run felt like buying the winning lottery ticket. You know it ain't gonna happen, but it's always fun to dream. But as the manhunt for Philip Johnson turned up nothing for months, it looked like he was gonna be the next DB Cooper, but with $20 million. And that's when David got a call from an old crush that would change his life forever. Picking up the phone, David was excited to hear Kelly Campbell's voice. His old co-workers and close friends, David had a huge crush on Kelly, and she knew it. She chugged beer, she was bold, she was everything David's wife was not. But Kelly said times were tough. She was broke, trying to divorce her husband, and David could relate, being up to his knees in debt. And after talking about Philip Johnson's heist for hours, she just straight up asked him, how would you feel about robbing Loomis Fargo?
That's a sick shirt. Milwaukee Vibrator. That's a tough ass shirt.
While they were both desperate for cash, there was no way she could be serious, but he listened in. Now, Kelly said she had a childhood friend in the mob, Steve, who would help them out, and it was a real simple plan. David would just steal the money from the Loomis vaults, hand off the cash to Kelly and Steve, the money would get cleaned by the mob. With a fake ID, David would escape to Mexico, where his share of the heist would be cleaned and wired to him over the course of months. And assuming the haul was $5 million split 3 ways, he'd be a multi-millionaire sipping Patron on the beach, while the FBI would have no idea where to look, because the money would be held where it had no connection to David. It was enough to set him up for life. It seemed foolproof, they thought. What would it take for you to do it? She said. Now, David knew there was no way in hell he was doing this. He had never been a criminal. He had a family to support. But Kelly's question slapped him in the face. You see, growing up, David's dad had given him the American dream. A suburban home, trips to Disney World, Wonder Bread, all on a trucker's salary. But as an Army vet with no degree, the best David got was a minimum wage, dead-end security job. Working 80 hours a week for $8 an hour, he didn't even have a life outside of work. At 27 years old, he could barely afford rent on a broken-down mobile home. And once he figured it would take him 30 years to pay the minimum payments on his credit card, David wanted out of the system. Robbing Loomis Fargo could set him up for life, but at the cost of never seeing anyone he knew in this life ever again. After vanishing for 5 months, Philip Johnson slipped up from one little mistake. On a bus ride from Mexico back to the States, Philip Johnson, using a fake ID, somehow alerted a seasoned customs agent who said she could smell the fear on Philip's sweat. Once she found the stolen cash and his fake ID in his bag, Philip Johnson's dreams of being the next DB Cooper were totally done. Now, with the news of his capture, David met with Kelly to just call off the heist. It wasn't worth it. Philip was looking at life in prison, and even if their plan worked out with the mafia's help, David would never see anyone he knew ever again. He would be a millionaire alone in Mexico. Kelly kisses him on the lips and says, "I'll go to Mexico with you. I'll leave my husband, you leave your wife, and we can live our lives together." For 2 years, he had dreamed of kissing her, and it sealed the deal. This heist wasn't about money now. He would get the girl, too. Let's rob this joint.
I mean, doesn't seem to be an immediate upgrade with the exception of the t-shirt. The t-shirt is pretty sick.
Squealing with joy, Kelly said the logistics would be worked out with Steve and the mafia, and David was going to drop his entire life, never seeing anyone he knew ever again, to live in a third world country as a wanted fugitive, all to get in an old co-worker's pants, all based off of one kiss, and trusted that Steve, a man David had never met and was in the mob, would send him his fair share down to Mexico. That's how desperate David was. It all begins on Saturday, October 4th, 1997. Telling his wife he'd be home late, David heads off to work, knowing it would be the last time he would see her ever again. On the drive over, the song "Take the Money and Run" plays on the radio, and for David, it was a sign from God. Now, October 4th was not a random date. That night, David was closing with a trainee who didn't know any of the security protocols, double checking locks, vaults, alarms, which was huge. Because when Philip Johnson robbed Loomis, well, he had to shackle and kidnap his coworkers because, they knew what the hell he was doing. And that kidnapping made Philip Johnson look at life in prison. So as David's closing, he forces the new hire to go watch training videos in the break room, while David's helping set up one of the biggest cash robberies in the United States. At 6 p.m., the two clock out, and smoking a cig, he watches the new hire head off home. And across the street, he winks at Kelly and 3 men parked in their car and heads back in to do the heist. Inside the vault, David knew the second he put that first stack of cash into his van, there was no going back. Whether he stole $1,000 or $1 million, he was gonna give either way. So why not go hard? Two hours later, the safe was empty, and now 2,700 pounds of cash, a literal ton, was in the back of the van.
God damn.
Smoking a cig in his boss's chair, he grabbed the 2 surveillance tapes that had recorded the entire robbery, locked the vault on a 3-day timer, and stole over 200 keys to the place. But as he starts up the van, loaded with millions of dollars for his final
They'll never know.
escape, there was one little detail he had missed. Double checking the batteries in the gate opener. I mean, honestly, a detail I would have missed. After screwing with the door for 30 minutes in a literal bank robbery, one of Steve's goons finally helped muscle the door open, and now phase 1 was complete. They had the cash. And across the street in her car, Kelly blew David a kiss, and that was all he needed to know, that this crazy plan was gonna work. At a private parking lot 2 miles west, David pulled up to see Steve's goons in a van loaded with blue plastic barrels. Handing the keys off to the goons, aka the made men. The money was now in the mafia's hands, and they told him the payments would come as they promised. Taking 25 grand for himself, Kelly drove David down to the airport for his final escape. Well, now the goons had the task of moving a literal ton of cash from the Loomis van into these blue plastic barrels. Now this had to be done fast. It's in a parking lot. They're in a bank robbery. But there's one little problem. See, David was already gone, and he'd given them a ring of 200 keys and just didn't tell them which one opened up the van. So for 20 minutes, they're trying each key. They're freaking out. They start trying to break the bulletproof glass, and then finally, the last key works 20 minutes later. Making up for lost time, the goons are moving the money to the barrels as fast as they can, and at the top of the barrel, they pour a little bit of dog food and put the cap on. Now, those barrels were crucial. Let's say they got pulled over in the van with the cash.
I think the biggest mistake he made was not take a cool mill. Because I feel like every other dollar that you have now officially given to the mafia is now, thank you very much. This is now the mafia's money.
Officer, it's just barrels of dog food. It was genius, almost too genius. With 25 grand strapped to his chest, David hops out at the airport. Kelly hands him his new ID, Mike McKinney, and gives her a kiss goodbye. But something was a little off. Now, David had assumed that Kelly, Steve, or the mafia would buy him a plane ticket to leave. I mean, that's the least they could do, right? He had just robbed a literal bank. But no, they hadn't even checked the airport hours. It was fucking closed. And even worse, the closest airport with a flight to Mexico was a 5-hour drive away. But Kelly ain't got time to drive 5 hours, so she buys him a bus ticket to get to that airport so David could go buy his own flight to escape the country in this grand heist. And David, with rose-tinted glasses, thinks it's totally fine. As the barrels rolled into Steve's mobile home, the stench of grimy cash filled the trailer. Steve, Kelly, Steve's wife Michelle, and the goons were going to count it all one by one. Now, they were expecting $5 million, but hours later as the sun rose, Michelle makes an announcement to everyone in the trailer. They had just counted $14 million, more money than any of them had ever seen in a lifetime. While everyone cheered and clapped, saying the things they were going to buy with their share of the fare, one of the goons screams, "We're going to get fucking caught," and darts out of the room. Now, Kelly thought this was a bit odd. Weren't these hardened mafiosos who had chopped off fingers and took people to swim with the fishies? Well, no one really knew it at the time, but Steve actually was not in the mafia. He just said that to freak people out. In reality, he was just like a small-time crook who wrote bad checks and watched Goodfellas one too many times.
Close enough.
Steve's goons? Those were all kids he knew in high school. Mafia banks up north? That was his parents' house. But as long as people thought Steve was in the mafia, people wouldn't with him. But in celebration of a successful heist of $14 million, Steve took everyone to Denny's for grand slams and to give them the talk. Now, a heist this large is going to bring a lot of heat, probably a year, maybe even 2. Now, during this time, he would give everyone the cash as they needed, not wanted, while the rest of the money would be sent up to special banks the mafia owned to be cleaned. Now, when the heat died off within a year or 2, everyone would get their fair share of now cleaned money. But any big spending they wanted to do had to be approved by Steve. But apparently Steve himself was exempt from his own rule. Now, I've actually had a real-life run-in with a burglar before, and I made a huge mistake. Now, as I'm getting ready for work, I noticed a BMW parked on my neighbor's lawn. Now, they never didn't even own a BMW, and I thought, nah, it's a little weird. 10 minutes later, my neighbor pulls up, and he comes over, and he's like, "Hey, Vince, do you know what the heck this BMW's doing on our lawn? Like whose car is this?" I tell him I don't know, I'm running late for work, so I head out of the house, and I leave. Later that day, I get a call from the cops, and my jaw drops to the floor. When my neighbor walked inside of his home, he was pistol whipped by 2 burglars who ransacked his home and then took off in that BMW. But because I was so focused on trying to get to work on time, I didn't think about calling the police for the 10 minutes I was there. But with today's sponsor, SimpliSafe, they can make that call for
Ethical
you. Now,
reaction,
SimpliSafe is a
up.
complete security system with advanced sensors and cameras to detect fire, floods, and even break-ins. But the best part is their 24/7 live guard protection. SimpliSafe agents respond to an alarm trip within 5 seconds to see and speak to intruders in real time, stopping them in their tracks, relaying details to the police, and then calling 911 on your behalf. Now, what I love about SimpliSafe is everything's controlled from one app. Door locks, security sensors, cameras as well. My favorite part is when you arm the system, you're also locking the doors as well. Like, how cool is that? Now, I've set up a lot of tech over the years, and SimpliSafe is some of the easiest to install. So you just pull out the little battery tab, you press the little setup button real quick.
Battery sensor added.
That was pretty easy. And for those who want the expertise of a pro, SimpliSafe has professional installation as well. Just having an actual human monitoring my security locks, my cameras, motion detectors, all for less than $1 a day with no long-term contracts, really lets me sleep easy at night knowing that SimpliSafe, they're always watching the house even when I'm not there. So save 20% on your system, and your first month is free when you sign up for the Fast Protect monitoring at simplisafe.com/YouTube. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. As Loomis employees arrived that morning, something was off. The van was gone, the tapes were missing, the vault had been locked for 3 days. Now, remember those 2 surveillance tapes that David took with him that recorded the entire robbery? Well, Loomis also had 13 hidden cameras, aka they had recorded the entire thing anyways. And by noon, David Gant was the FBI's #1 suspect. Only problem though, they didn't know where the hell he was at. They looked at flight records, bus tickets, friends, families, rating, immigration, nothing was coming up. His wife said he had to have been held hostage. I mean, he had made a dentist appointment for the next week, and with no criminal record, the FBI had to seriously consider this. Because with how much cash David stole, this didn't look like a one-man job. So the question was, did David work with help under a gun or under his own free will? And David's wife was really tortured with these 2 theories. One, David had ditched her forever, acting like someone she'd never truly knew. Or 2, David was dead. Now, Steve and his wife were idiots. While they told everyone to hold off on spending any big bucks, they had been looking at mansions to purchase with their heist money for the past month. Mind you, they lived.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's amazing. Just straight cash, dude. Buying a fucking house with straight cash after living in a trailer park, that will certainly not ring any alarm bells, dude.
Lived in a trailer park. So the day after the heist, no joke, Steve signs an offer to buy a $635,000 mansion in straight cash. Told the buyers it was all cash from his gambling winnings. But then later that day, Steve's wife Michelle walks into the bank with the briefcase and asks the worst question you could ask as a criminal to a bank teller. How much money can I deposit without it being reported to the IRS? The teller says,
yeah,
it's $10,000. So Michelle, thinking she's all clever, pops open the briefcase with 200 grand, takes one small stack, removes a couple bills, and hands it to the teller and says, it ain't drug money, here's $9,500. And technically, she wasn't lying. Yeah, that deposit, it was reported to the feds anyway. Landing in Cancun, Mexico, David felt this was his new chance at life. Now, to coordinate the money being sent down and plan their future together in Mexico, Kelly promised she would be at the exact same Circle K payphone every Tuesday at 2 p.m. so David could call her while staying anonymous, back when payphones existed. But now with 25 grand burning a hole in his pocket, David Gant, or now known as Mike McKinney, had pulled off the heist of the century. He had to look the part. He got a tan, he dyed his hair, pierced his ears, bought the pointiest python skin cowboy boots to blend in with the Mexican peoples, and to top it all off, a pair of Oakleys in 3 different colors. David in this new life was cool. He was kind of a dork, to be honest. I mean, let's be. But making up for lost time, having never been on vacation, he goes jet skiing, mine ruins, tacos, beers, beaches. Money was just no object to him right now. He couldn't wait for Kelly to come down. He daydreamed about their kids bragging on the playground about their badass dad who pulled off the heist of the century. But every Tuesday when David asked her when she was coming down, she always said it just wasn't the right time. But for David, it was the perfect time. According to news reports, even a month later, the FBI still had no idea where he was at. But then David also knew the FBI also played their cards very close to their chest. Now, all the FBI needed was just one thread to lead him somewhere. They had nothing. They'd put up a $500,000 reward, blasted his face on TV, nothing. But that one thread would actually come from a coworker who said David's only true friend was Kelly Campbell. Rolling up to her mobile home, Kelly told the FBI she had heard all about the robbery, and she was so shocked because, oh my god, David was such a close friend. She said they hung out and they smoked weed, but the last time she'd ever talked to David, well, it was 3 weeks before the heist. And while the feds insisted she do a lie detector test, Kelly refused. They knew she was hiding something. Was it an affair? Maybe it was the weed, or maybe she was involved with the robbery. But it wasn't just the FBI breathing down Kelly's neck. David demanded an answer to when she would come, when he would get more money, so Kelly just goes to Steve to figure out what to do next. In Steve's new mansion, he had all the accoutrements of excess.
I mean, just surveil Kelly at that point.
Robert E. Lee paintings, Baccarat crystal chandeliers, Robert E. Lee statues, and the crowning jewel, an Elvis painting on velvet, gifted by the previous owner. The place was beautiful. Yeah, the place was gaudy as shit. Now, with the money being controlled by Steve, Kelly visited weekly to get cash for, bills and rent, and somehow just saw no problem with Steve's excessive spending. I mean, he was a mobster after all, right? Because this whole heist wasn't actually Kelly's idea, it was actually Steve's, and David was just a pawn. Kelly had never actually planned the move to Mexico. She knew David would be willing to commit the largest heist in history just to get the box. And Steve's master plan? String David along for as long as possible. A month later in Mexico, David had nearly spent all.
Yeah, he's so fucking dumb, dude. Only 25 grand is the dumbest thing he could have done. Thinking that he's like aligned with the mob, even if the guy isn't a mobster, still dumb. Like, you just stole $14 million. You stole $14 million for someone else at that point. That's it. Not taking a mill is so stupid. I know. At least a mill. Isn't there a limit to how much you can bring cash on an airplane? First of all, this is like way back when. Okay. Secondly, who cares? Just lie. He had already gone over the legal limit of how much money he can bring into Mexico to begin with. Back then, you could just walk onto an airplane with a gun, okay? He was over the limit of money he could steal from a bank, too. I know. It seemingly was not a concern for him when he went over the legal limit of how much you can steal from a bank.
All of his money. To stretch his dollar, he moved from the 5-star resort with lobster dinners into a cheap Mexican motel filled with top ramen. In the nighttime, he partied at Cancun's seediest clubs just to forget the mess he was in. Desperate, he demanded 50 grand from Kelly, but her story was always the same. She'd talk it over with Steve, maybe next week, she said, and David, a man who had left it all behind in dreams of getting the girl and becoming a millionaire criminal, was now going broke in a third world country. Wherever you go, there you are. And David was now forced to penny pinch just like how he did at home. Now, Steve felt like Kelly deserved a treat, and that for her was a brand new minivan. So he picks one up, and Kelly's totally stoked on the van. But Steve actually did one of the dumbest things you could do as a criminal. He bought it under his real name, and even paid for the van with cash. But it didn't matter. With Kelly in a good mood...
Bro, this guy's the dumbest... Oh my God, bro. Honestly, not to sound like jank, but back then, crime was free. Okay? I swear to God. I guess it's kind of comparable to like doing crime in crypto now. You know what I mean? It's like straight up easy mode. Law tip: Trump should pardon these guys. They're very January 6th coded. True.
Steve has her over to his mansion to talk about David being a liability. I mean, if David got pissed off, he could just turn himself in and bam, they were all toast. David, he was just a risk straight up. So after pounding his...
He was a risk. He's the guy who did the whole thing. Assuming he's the liability is crazy. Bitch, saying that in the fucking mansion that you bought with straight cash is crazy, okay?
Fourth Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Yeah. The point in that situation is like you're supposed to drip feed him some money so that he doesn't actually turn around and fuck you over.
Steve actually lays it out to her that he's actually wanted David dead this entire time. There was no way, she said. They were close friends. I mean, she couldn't be a killer. Steve tried to lessen the blow, saying David could die peacefully being injected with bleach, even though that doesn't kill you. Kelly refused, but I mean...
Yeah, that's right. Vince is a Trump truther. It doesn't kill you. It actually makes you stronger, especially against COVID.
Would it really matter if she said no? I mean, Steve was in the mob and they always got their way. So backed into a corner, she just told Steve, do whatever you need to do. Giddy with joy, Steve offers the hit job to an old friend from the army, the man who could take him out, Bruno. But you see, Steve didn't want Bruno knowing that he or the man he was supposed to murder were involved with the Loomis heist, so he lays out an intricate lie. A man named Scott was in a shooting in the United States and forced to flee to Mexico. While Steve had been giving him money as a part of their mob relations, Scott was now a liability. So Bruno would go down to Mexico to give Scott cash at the Rainforest Cafe, befriend him, and then murder him when he got the chance. All for 250 grand. And Scott was really David. A hit job at the Rainforest Cafe. I don't know much more 2000s you can get than that. And Bruno was totally down. Now, while thousands of tips about David Gant's location came in from America's Most Wanted, all of them led nowhere. But 3 months into the investigation, they finally got that little thread. Now, Kelly had told the FBI that she had last talked to David weeks before the heist. But according to her phone records, the girl was lying. She had actually talked to David the day of the heist. So the FBI look into Kelly Campbell again, and they find out, oh my God, she's driving a brand new minivan. Oh, and it was purchased in all cash. Oh, and it was bought by a man named Steve Chambers. So the feds look into Steve and they find out, oh, he had just moved from a trailer park home into a $635,000 mansion that he paid with all cash the week after the heist. They knew that Steve, Kelly, and David were all in on the heist, but they needed more evidence because number one, they didn't know where was the money or where was even David Gant, or was he even alive at this point. Inside the Rainforest Cafe with $10K in his pocket, Bruno, he had a little problem. You see, he didn't even know what Scott looked like.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh my God. So they sent a busted ass hitman who's not even a real fucking hitman without telling him what his target is supposed to look like. That's amazing. In a Rainforest Cafe, this is perfect. Yeah, the profile of the types of people that are doing these sorts of crimes are fucking hilarious. Like, it's just, they're so dumb.
Steve never gave him a picture, so Bruno really thought about
with the wrong name too.
The situation. He was supposed to give Scott 10 grand and then murder him. So he thought, why not just spend the money and murder him later? So he walks out on Scott and blows 10 grand on Hookers, coke, tacos, all in one night. He heads back home and tells Steve, "Oh my God, I just couldn't find Scott." And even worse, the 10 grand was confiscated by customs. Now Steve's really livid, but he wants David dead. So he gives him another 10 grand and a picture.
Oh my God, this guy's giving more money to, bro. If he just gave this money directly to him, he would have no issues. Actually, it'd be less money for him to spend stupidly, as a matter of fact. Meanwhile, he's just doing the free money glitch for some random guy.
Scott, and next week they finally meet in a hotel room. Now mind you, David stole $17 million, but now he's broke. All he wanted was just 50 grand. But as Bruno opens up the suitcase, he says, "Here's 8,500 bucks. It's all they gave me." Bruno took 1,500 for himself. Pissed off, David grabbed the suitcase and just left the room. Then for the first time, he began to doubt this entire thing. Would he really have to live his entire life begging for money like this month after month? Now with some cash, David treated himself to his favorite meal to get his mind off things. The Hard Rock Cafe baby back ribs. So good. But as he's chowing down, an American tourist walks up to him and says, "You look familiar. You look like that guy that stole all that money." Cleaning his hands with a moist towelette, David hands him his ID and tells him, "Hell no, my name is Mike McKinney and I've been here for years." Disappointed, the tourist heads off. David drops a $100 bill and runs out of the Hard Rock. This was the reality check he needed. He was a wanted man. He needed to get out of Cancun ASAP. People wanted his head. Now on their next call, David told Kelly he'd just been recognized by a tourist, only to be saved by that fake ID. And with a $500,000 reward for his capture, he needed to get the hell out of Cancun. Now, Kelly said, "Calm down, Bruno will meet with you ASAP and he'll give you more cash. And Bruno will help him move to another city in Mexico. And once David settled into that city, Kelly would finally escape to Mexico with him. For Bruno, it was perfect. He would finally get that little moment to take out David. And once again, David thought Kelly was finally gonna come down. Hey, I'm never going home, dude. Yeah, Steve told me you're like involved in like a shooting or something. What the f are you talking about? He hasn't like Steve helping you out like with the money. Steve didn't tell you? I'm the dude who hit the Loomis robbery. Steve has all the money and won't give me my shit. That's why you're here, to give me my money. Bruno was shocked, but told David, it actually made sense. Steve had just bought a new mansion, BMWs, blowing through the cash like no tomorrow. Steve had lied to the both of them, and they were both pissed. David was pissed that he had risked everything for absolutely nothing. And Bruno was pissed that the guy he was going to take out was on the FBI's most wanted list. Definitely not someone you want to get tangled with.
Bro, at that point, you should be like, damn, there's a much larger reward if I just turn you in. God, everyone in this story is so dumb. Everyone involved in this story is so fucking stupid. Like, just snitch him out to the fucking feds and collect the 500 grand, stupid. But then they know he was a hitman? No, you don't have to fucking admit that you're a hitman. What do you mean? Just be like, this guy, worst case scenario, you could be like, this fucking guy offered me 10 grand. I was like, okay, sure, I'll take the 10 grand. I didn't actually end up doing the job. I just ended up spending the 10 grand because this guy was a real dumbass. I didn't even know he was being serious about it. Worst case, if they catch you, you could just be like, if they're like, excuse me, what do you mean it says here, they're saying that like he took a hit out. If you found this dude in Mexico, would you personally snitch him out for the cash? No, but I'm not a hitman. I assume he has a very different moral compass.
But it got Bruno thinking. Steve wanted...
Bro, if you were going to kill the guy, you might as well fucking give him up to the feds and get 500 grand. What the fuck?
The hit job done, but he never said by who. His house cleaner always did a good job. What if he could find a cheap Mexican laborer to take him out? So the next day, Bruno, a 50-year-old white dude, searched for the meanest looking busboy in the resort. Looking far and wide, he found Roberto Rodriguez, a tatted up Mexicano.
That's crazy that he's outsourcing. Bro, the global south can't catch a break. Mexico's included in the global south, okay? Can't catch a fucking break. Americans always got to outsource it to some Mexican dude, bro. That's fucked up.
Just trying to provide for his family. Bruno asked him if he wanted to make some fast cash. Roberto, thinking this was some weird sex stuff like he had in the past, said no, But after flashing the cash, Roberto knew he was serious. I mean, he could use that money to take his family out of poverty. It was more money than he'd ever seen. So he agreed to take out David Gann for $30,000. Bruno was like a Jeff Bezos, knowing how to perfectly exploit the poor to enrich himself. Now the plan was Roberto would meet with David to give him some cash, get him all liquored up, become friends with him, and then do the deed when the timing was right in a little private area. It was foolproof, although Bruno had missed out on one little detail. It was Monday Night Football, and David was a huge fan of the Steelers, and Bruno had happened to hire one of the only Mexicans on earth who was also a Steelers fan, Robert. Showing up in matching Steelers jerseys, instantly the two become friends. They're crushing Dos Equis, eating taquitos, and when the Steelers win the game, Robert just straight up levels with him. His life was in danger. Bruno hadn't brought him here to give him money.
Bro, they're fucking, they bonded over Ben Roethlisberger. They were like, listen, dog, Steelers fan to Steelers fan, we gotta have a heart-to-heart.
But paid him 30 grand to murder him. But Robert had a conscience. He couldn't kill a fellow member of the Steeler Nation. I mean, he loved the team. He considered him now a friend, being the only other Mexican who liked the Steelers. And David was furious. I mean, he should have saw this coming from a mile away, getting involved with the mob. So he gave Roberto $3,000, thankful that a Steelers jersey saved his life. But what pissed David off the most was, did Kelly have any part in this murder plot? Now, at the start of the new year, Steve was living life full throttle. Exotic vacations, throwing elaborate parties, inviting old friends from high school to show off all of his newfound success. Life could not be any better. In contrast to David, who looked behind his shoulder everywhere he went, was running low on cash, Kelly kept blowing him off, tourists were now recognizing him, the FBI was now hunting him, and now Steve and the Mafia wanted him dead, and his only friend was the man hired to kill him. He missed the routine of his family, his wife, eating Hamburger Helper on Sundays. Stuck in a motel, he was listening to the Eagles, eating peanut M&Ms by himself, bored out of his mind. Life sucked for David Gann. That next Tuesday, he made an ultimatum to Kelly. He was going to turn himself in if he did not get more cash now. Now, by the new year, the FBI still had no evidence of Steve Chambers' involvement with this heist. They knew they were all connected.
I would watch the movie. I think they made a movie of this, by the way. Someone was saying in the chat, Zach Galifianakis played a role in it.
But they didn't have the pieces of string to tie it all
together. Movie's called Masterminds.
You know, because in 1998, when constitutional rights still existed, a judge said they did not have enough evidence to get a wiretapping warrant against Steve Chambers. But all they need...
That's crazy. Pre-9/11... Pre-9/11 shit was different, dude. God damn. Post 9/11, you can still do all this shit. You just have to be rich. You can steal, lie, cheat, do whatever the fuck you want. As long as you're wealthy enough, you can avoid legal scrutiny, you know?
Needed was just
34% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll just take the YouTube video. God damn.
Just one more good piece of evidence.
1991 to 2000, God mode era to be an adult. Honestly, only if you're a white guy, I think. It was like... I feel like that was the peak. White guys were truly on top.
And then finally, they could listen in on all of their calls. Now, the FBI knew every single Monday, his wife Michelle went to the bank to deposit $9,500. While very sketch, nothing illegal. I mean, she's been doing this for months. But that week, Michelle deposits her $9,500 and just forgets to take the Loomis band off of the money.
No.
Bingo. It was the final piece.
That was the final piece? Oh my God, dude. Bro, this is an era I feel like that could be defined with you're stupid for not doing crimes and schemes. Honestly, America was truly fucking free, dude. That's crazy. That is actually crazy. They basically telegraphed exactly what they did. They were like, we did this, officer, right here. Right here. It's me.
Piece they needed to get those wiretap warrants. They had the money, they had it somewhere, and now they needed to find out where was the cash and where was David Gann. Outside the Circle K, the FBI van listened in on Kelly's Tuesday call. Now, they knew she had been making these calls for months, but now finally they could hear who she was talking to and what about. It was a man demanding more money, or else he would turn himself in. Kelly told the caller that a man named Bruno would give him more money ASAP, and then she hung up the call. And while this man didn't give any details, everyone knew it was David Gant. And after tracing the call, it led back to the Hotel La Tortuga in Cozumel, Mexico. Later that day, the FBI listened in on Steve's call to Bruno, assuming the two were connected. They began talking about decoys, guns, Mexico, bleach, getting close to somebody. It looked like Steve was trying to kill David, and Kelly...
Bro, Bruno is not killing David, dog. Free my man Bruno. He didn't do nothing, okay? He is too incompetent to be an assassin. Like, it's one of those weird cases where, like, I know it's still... Like, you are still trying to attempt to do a very serious crime. But I think he might be the one guy who's so bad. He's so bad. He's like worse than Ryan Ruth. As you guys know, I've talked about how, Ryan Ruth should walk a free man because he didn't do nothing. Like, he literally didn't do anything. You know what I mean? Seems like he might have had the intent, but we don't know. Okay. But like this man, Bruno, he should walk free. Like, he is literally not a threat to public safety because he's that fucking stupid. Like, you're just using state resources for no reason. If you're prosecuting this man, if you're putting him behind bars, you are wasting limited state resources at this point because, like, what is the deterrence? He's stupid. He's too stupid to know he did something wrong. And it's not like he could do it anyway.
He was setting all that up. And now the FBI needed to get their ass to Mexico ASAP to save his life. As Interpol and the FBI raced over to the Hotel La Tortuga, sticking out like a sore thumb was the only gringo in the pool. It was David Gant. Asking him if they could see his passport, David saw a swarm of agents circling him. And the first thing he said...
He's trying to kill someone, though? Yeah, but not trying hard enough. Okay? That's my point. Like, sure, he's technically trying to kill someone, but he's unironically too stupid to pull it off, and therefore he should be let go. Like, I've never seen anybody who's just like so incredibly chill about this attempted assassination where he's just like, it's fine.
Please tell me you're an FBI agent. For David, it was the happiest he'd been in months. He didn't have to look over his shoulders now. Everything that was horrendous was now coming to an end. Handcuffed to the bed, waiting his flight home, much like that scene in Catch Me If You Can, the agents had one question for Kelly. It was the question that everyone wanted to know. Did he ever bang Kelly? I was in love with her. I only kissed her one time. Pretty expensive kiss. That was the first time they'd ever saw someone throw away their life because they had kissed one woman. Within an hour of David's arrest, the FBI and IRS arrested Kelly, Mike McKinney, Steve, wife, the goons, everyone. And as headlines broke around the country, David Gant became a celebrity. All of the inmates were impressed by him. The public was fascinated. But David knew that when he got home, he was going to have to face the music. His wife was probably going to divorce him, his family was going to disown him, and he was going to go to prison for a very long time. But people actually felt bad for David, and they kind of related to him. I mean, he did what a lot of people want to do. Change his life the quick and easy way. He had been roped into this heist from a girl that he had a crush on, and while he was living in a hotel eating peanut M&Ms, all of the co-conspirators who really did nothing with the heist were just buying mansions and blowing and spending it all, and people felt so bad for David Gant. It just seemed...
I get it. I mean, it is true. Should he be arrested for what? Dreaming? Is it a crime? Okay, sure, a bank heist is a crime, but really think about it. The real crime he committed was dreaming of a better future for himself, and also maybe getting some sweet Kelly pussy. Okay. Also, as you guys know, bank robberies, victimless crime. You know my attitude on this. Okay.
Seemed like he couldn't get a break. But through a long court case of all of the evidence, David was sentenced to 11 years in prison, while everyone else would get similar sentences as well. Now today, David's out of prison and has turned a new leaf. He says that one mistake has brought him everything good in his life today. He remarried, he has a kid, and he gets up to go to work every morning just like everyone else. And if asked if he would do it again, he said, hell yeah.
Someone said, is that Dan Clancy?